Okay, guys. Every time update notes come out, I generally tend to do this thing where I go through them and talk about how I think it will change and how your favourite heroes might change and sort of what different build paths might be available depending on item nerfs and hero nerfs. I don't often talk about talents. I don't really play enough talent-based modes to be able to talk about it, so we're going to focus mainly on the gameplay changes for casual and ranked in 3v3 and 5v5. First of all, let's start with the Ghostwing changes. These are the gameplay changes for Ghostwing. As you can see, Ghostwing's damage to structures, as in you get a buff that deals extra damage to structures if you have Ghostwing's buff, is down from 25 to 15%, and the barrier that you get is down from 60 plus 40, so down from 100 plus 40. So basically, it's not gutting Ghostwing, it's definitely toning down the change that they made to help promote Ghostwing as a objective-orientated neutral objective. So you take Ghostwing and then you go and take like a couple of turrets, or you go and take a push down and get an armory, for instance. It did result in super snowbally games. In fact, you've seen in the VPL, a lot of teams specifically had a couple of members on the side of the map where they wanted to control that area in order to then pile up and go for Ghostwing. Slimy Salamanders did it, and then they used that with a very heavy siege composition to take turrets quickly. It resulted in massively snowballing games, and this is going to tone that down just a little bit. Still think it's a good objective. Ghostwing's still in a great position. No changes to Blackclaw. Let's have a look at the hero balance changes. We're straight into it then. Baron's cooldown reduction per basic attack on jump jets from 8% to 15%. So basically, Baron is going to have jump jets up more frequently, and you should be able to get it up after like 6 or 7 basic attacks on top of the cooldown, so maybe even like 4 or 5 basic attacks. It's going to make Baron a bit more mobile. Baron is already fringes of the meta. I don't think this is going to make Baron like crazy good, especially because if you see down in the item changes, Tension Bow has been nerfed. So overall, this is a nice change for Baron. It doesn't mean he's going to become super viable, but definitely means that when he gets to the late game, he'll be more mobile and it'll give him more presence in team fights. Baron will probably stay where he is in the meta right now, which is you are probably going to be looking to play him as a specific late game carry and maybe play a composition around him. So if you're good at weapon power Baron, obviously this is going to be a nice buff for you, but it's not going to make him super OP or anything like that. Black Feather changes. Faint of Heart cooldown has been reduced, and the charge time on Rose Offensive, the time it takes you to generate a Rose Offensive charge, has gone down as well. I don't think Blackfeather was in a terrible position. This is not going to make Blackfeather like crazy good again, because obviously there was a point in the meta where, especially in 3v3, Blackfeather was all that we ever saw. This is just going to make him a little bit better into matchups that he's already good into. He's still going to be a great Celeste killer, and I think still going to be a decent side lane pick for any weapon power carries that like to play Blackfeather. Good buff for him. It's going to make him strong, but not super strong. Definitely going to raise his position in the meta a little bit, but not like by a huge amount. We're not talking like he's going to be an S tier pick anymore. He's still going to be like an A tier pick. He was kind of like AB previously, probably like an A tier pick now. Celeste, damage down on Heliogenesis, the base damage, and the Supernova Crystal ratio is down, and travel speed on Solar Storm has decreased. I want to know how much on Solar Storm it's been decreased, because it was upped by about, I think it was up by about 50% last time, so I'm wondering whether they're going to just revert that. One of the problems with Solar Storm is that you couldn't dodge it because it was so quick now, especially at close range. The Supernova Crystal ratio, a 30% hit is pretty big, but not ridiculous. But let's, talk about the base damage of Heliogenesis, then you add a Supernova in. I think Celeste is still going to be good. Like, the problem with Celeste is not so much, I mean, the Supernova was definitely a problem, but it wasn't so much that 30% nerf is going to knock her out the park. It was more that she could spam this like Heliogenesis every 1 second and get huge amount of map control and huge amount of control pre-team fights. And honestly, they haven't hit the base damage too hard at all. So you're still going to probably spike a similar level with Heavy Prism and Eclipse Prism, and you're still going to have great presence post level 8. It just means Celeste might not be like that absolute single best pick in the world right now, which she kind of was for a lot of top tier mid laners, but this is a decent nerf, but not enough to make her terrible. So Celeste is still good. So if you like Celeste, Celeste is still good. Travel speed increased on Hook and Chain. The damage has been decreased. So or is this the life gain has been decreased? I can't really tell. It doesn't really make it very obvious. But essentially upping the speed of his hooks, because you can then reset them more often in team fights. The problem with Churnwalker in 5v5 is that the amount of time it takes to get multiple hooks off against 5 members, you're just spending half the fight trying to land your hook and chain, rather than doing anything else. So overall, this is probably going to make him... I mean, look, I don't think this is going to change Churnwalker from already being a very good captain. Churnwalker was still already a great captain just from his gank potential. This is going to make him a bit scarier when he comes into lane because it's going to be easier for him to land his hook. But otherwise, yeah, I think pretty much keeps Churnwalker where he is. Glaive, attack speed per level up by that's like almost 100% up. Twisted Stroke cooldown is down. Bloodsong damage per stack is up. Good. Good. Glaive is one of my favourite heroes, and I think he's one of the most iconic heroes in Vainglory because he really permeates that ability to use touch controls to have a massive impact, maybe even joystick controls now with the joysticks coming out in this update. And I think Glaive is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting laners and junglers in the game. This is going to make Glaive really good, and especially it's going to allow him to scale up a bit better with the attack speed too. Glaive is now looking, I think, for me, like S/A tier. I think he's going to be super strong. And praise all Glaive players, because I think that's a really exciting set of buffs for him. I think Glaive's going to be good. Couple of things now with Idris. Required threshold of his Divergent Pass 100 to 120 for both paths. Couple of things here. Hybrid Idris build is kind of dead. Very much more difficult to achieve that now. You can still go Sorrowblade, I think, then into CP if you want to. But honestly, it's going to be much harder to achieve. It also means that if you go Weapon Power, you're most likely just going to have to go Sorrowblade if you want to achieve that Divergent Path. I think you can probably go Spell Sword and a few... Weapon Blades, but honestly, it feels like now is 100% either going to be Sorrowblade or Shatterglass. Absolutely need to go those 2 items to unlock your path. You can go Dragon's Eye and 2 crystal bits. You can go the new Frostburn and 1 crystal bit, which could be a real build path for Idris now. But honestly, it definitely means that really horrible build in lane where people used to go 5 crystal bits in the boots for CP Idris is kind of gone now. But they can still go 6 crystal bits, but they lose that ability to have the safety in lane with their boots. So I think it's a good change. It was very oppressive to play against a Crystal Power Idris who just bought like crap tons of crystal bits in the early game. It was too easy to achieve that build path. And I think this is a required change to make Idris spike a little bit later, because a lot of changes have been making Idris come online a bit earlier, and CP Idris especially is supposed to be something that becomes more powerful in the later game. Kestrel, weapon power, base weapon power up, and glimmer shot weapon power ratio overdrive to 110%. Wow, I think there's going to be a couple of North American players who are especially looking forward to these changes, because Kestrel had already been kind of rearing her head in the side lane meta, and I think this is going to make Weapon Power Kestrel super viable, especially if you're going down that critical strike build path where you're going to get now slightly harder hitting glimmer shots again when you overdrive it. Really nice change for Weapon Power Kestrel players. Enough that she's not going to be the same oppressive Weapon Power Kestrel that she was before, but enough to make Weapon Power Kestrel super viable again. So I really like these changes. I think Weapon Power Kestrel is going to be a big pick coming into this next update. Blood Rush, bonus movement speed, the change that I told Nivmet about 3 months ago that I wanted. That should do enough to slow down Koshka from the jungle. One of the major issues Koshka had is that she could navigate the map far too quickly by taking jungle camps, using that movement speed to get into lanes too quickly, and then suddenly she appeared in another lane because obviously Blood Rush was just a really, really ridiculous ability for that kind of thing. So I think it's a good change. Again, an aftershock-based carry is still going to be good, so I envision Koshka is still going to be in a decent place. But this is a change that I think she needed, and it's going to make her easier to kind of predict where she is on the map, because obviously with her really high movement speed, it was very difficult, and she was very hard to lock down as well. I still think Koshka is going to be a higher tier jungle pick. I don't think this is enough to make her trash tier, but obviously she may now be contested a bit more readily by Alpha, for instance, who received her nerfs in the previous update, so Alpha and Koshka probably sitting on that level pegging again. Cruel, weapon power stats down in the early game, and lifesteal is down and scales up to 11%. Okay, wow, they're really trying to gut Cruel here. Really trying to gut Cruel hard. this is good, and I think these changes are good. Definitely means that he's going to have less sustain in the early game, which is nice. You're not going to achieve that same level of sustain until you hit level 7, I believe. So these are good changes, and I support them. I don't think this is going to mean Cruel's terrible. I think Cruel is probably not going to be sitting at S tier anymore. He might jump down to A tier. But the base damage on Spectral Smite has always been what's made Cruel good. You just got onto them, stacked that Spectral Smite, and slammed them really hard in the early game. So if you can get in and get that Spectral Smite stacking, then I think Cruel's still going to be in a good spot. Oh, big changes for Lance. I love Lance changes. I'm always a big fan of Lance changes. Attack speed, item scaling up from 50%. He's got an attack speed per level now. Githian Wool weapon ratio's up. Combat roll has a weapon ratio. Why am I talking like I've got a lisp today? Combat roll has got a weapon ratio. The cooldown is down, meaning it might even be worth overdriving as a weapon power lance. And stamina cost is down. Weapon power lance is here. Everybody praise our new overlord, because it now means that Lance doesn't have to just go straight tension bow into Sorrowblade and then just have nothing to build. You can now feasibly build Breaking Point. You can feasibly even, well, I wouldn't build Poison Shiv. I don't think it works too well with what Lance is trying to achieve, but like, you can build Breaking Point and actually feel good about building Breaking Point now as well, especially if you miss your Impale, you still have the attack speed scaling up. I don't think you're going to overload a weapon power on Lance, but I can envision even seeing maybe a Tornado Trigger Lance build where you just hit people really hard, you get the Impale off, you land it, and then you just stab them a couple of times for some critical strikes. But obviously this now means that a build path may be going from Tension Bow, Sorrowblade, Breaking Point, which is kind of a standard build path for weapon power Lance anyway, is going to be really good on him. So I love this. Spell Sword obviously also coming in big because of the stamina regeneration, so I like the Spell Swords builds coming through, so Spell Sword into Breaking Point is good too. Yeah, I really like this Lance changes. This is probably going to make Lance a S tier jungler potentially. You might even see him in the lane. I think Weapon Power Lance is a really good potential jungler coming into this next update, especially because of his ganking potential being really high. Lyra's had some of her crystal ratio shifted onto her passive, so empowered shot crystal ratio from 70 to 80%, and the crystal ratio toned down on her Imperial Sigil. A lot of people were abusing CP Lyra because her Imperial Sigil CP ratio made her very oppressive, because you could just hit that on the enemy and it was very difficult for the enemy to respond. So they're just trying to shunt some power onto her basic attacks, meaning that she has to commit a little bit harder to maybe get the same output in a fight. CP Lyra was always kind of a pocket pick or a unique pick that people went for, so she's probably going to remain that way. Mileena, Light Ribbons damage down by 40 in the late game. Enchanted Transformation, the cooldown is up. Slow is down, and damage, got gutted in the late game. Oh, that damage is hard. And Mileena's still going to be a good pick, guys. Don't worry. I mean, she works too well with Aftershock to make her not a good pick. And I still think she'll be a really good mid laner, maybe even still remain in the top 5 in the mid lane. This is just toning down some of her power, because she was really, really, really strong. But because she works so well with Aftershock still, you're going to see her still. This damage here, this change here, is a pretty significant hit. That's a 60 damage change in the late game. But again, a lot of her damage wasn't truly reliant on her base damages. A lot of it came directly from that synergy with Aftershock, and how easy it was for her to use her mobility to play around Aftershock Dragon's Eye, which is a really good build path for her. So Mileena's still going to be good, just have power levels coming down a little bit, just like Celeste. Okay, let's take a look at Ozo. Weapon power ratio on 3-Ring Circus. So this is a nice addition for weapon power Ozo. It's not going to make him meta. Ozo himself is very difficult to make meta, especially on 5v5, because honestly, Ozo's just not suited for 5v5. This might make Ozo a decent weapon power side laner, but in general, Ozo's kit is not super suited for 5v5 in general. Still might make him powerful in 3v3 for sure, but Ozo's just not a 5v5 suited hero. So this is a nice addition. It's some quality of life for weapon power Ozo mains. I know you're out there, but it's not going to make him meta. Rhyme's movement speed up. So they basically reverted some of the Rhyme nerfs that they gave probably about 4 or 5 updates ago. I've always thought Rhyme is like a sleeper side laner. this is going to make him good on 3v3 again. Absolutely, this is going to make him good on 3v3. It remains to be seen whether this is going to translate to 5v5. Rhyme's too easily focused down in 5v5 to make him as good as he was on 3v3. This is definitely going to make him good on 3v3, so for sure if you're a Rhyme player and play 3v3, this is going to make him good. 5v5 might make him a good side laner. Again, it's very difficult to make Rhyme work because he's so easily focused and so much CC to face up against. But this is a good set of quality of life changes for him. It's going to make him more viable in 5v5, still a potential counterpick in the side lane. So I'm glad to see these, and I think it could genuinely be enough to put him in at least a counterpick territory for side laners if you get the chance. Reza. Hitbox decreased to more accurately match effects, travel speed increased, and range has gone up. So basically, Scorcher was like really wide in terms of its hitbox. That's been narrowed in a little bit, but they've compensated by increasing the travel speed and increasing the range. I think it looks like they've increased the range, so it's going to make Reza a bit more harassy, and also allows him to tag targets from a little bit further away, which is nice. I believe 9.5 is also the same range as the Celeste Heliogenesis post level 8, so you're going to match that. Post-dash lock-on time is down to 0, cooldown to 0.5, so you can double Troublemaker super quickly for like unlimited burst if you time, or really, really nice burst if you time that correctly. Netherform detonator landing time is down, and you also get decaying movement speed going over 2.5. So this is a set of Reza buffs, realistically. Like, there was some changes to Scorcher, which was a slight nerf, but these are overall Reza buffs, and Reza was already in a really good spot. So Reza's probably going to be like absolute S tier side laner now. Absolutely, Reza, 100%. Great right now. Ringo's health is up, and Twirling Silver cooldown is down. Ringo was kind of like a fringe side laner. This is not enough to make him crazy meta, but it's definitely some nice changes to allow him to be a bit more flexible about the use of his Twirling Silver in lane. And Spell Sword Ringo, 100% uptime Twirling Silver could definitely be coming back into the picture here. So Ringo, not enough to make him meta, I think, but it just makes him slightly better, obviously. Rona's attack damage is down on Berserker's Fury, which is her passive. Foe Splitter cooldown is up, and the weapon ratio is down. This is actually going to hurt Rona a significant amount overall. Again, Rona's... They're trying to nerf her slowly to get her into a good spot. This is a decent nerf, but Rona has got too few bad matchups in the side lane to make her not meta. This is definitely going to hurt her position in the tier list, but I still think she's just got so many good matchups. She can still all in at level 2 really easily, that I think Rona is going to stay A tier for sure. So I think Rona's still good. Nerfs are significant enough to make her weaker, but she still has too few bad matchups, and I think Rona's still going to be in a good spot. Scarf Spitfire ratio down, Dragon's Breath ratio up. They're trying to make Scarf a bit more of a teamfight orientated, AoE teamfight orientated hero. The Spitfire nerf, that's a pretty significant Spitfire nerf. Scarf was like on the fringes of being awesome. And obviously because the Spitfire speed went up recently, it made it very difficult to dodge Spitfires. So I think these changes are going to... Overall, it's like a balanced change, isn't it? But a lot of Scarf's power is loaded specifically onto his Spitfire, because he likes to get that work done like Celeste does with Heliogenesis before a fight takes place. I think Scarf's going to remain like borderline super good in the mid lane, borderline. So there's still going to be those really good picks like Samuel, Celeste, Varia, who's probably Varia's kind of with Mileena maybe looking at sort of the best mid laner right now. But Scarf's kind of being molded into a bit more of a teamfight orientated hero in terms of trying to load a lot of power onto his goop and load a lot of power onto his Dragon's Breath. So now you have to be maybe a bit more sort of conservative about when you use that Dragon's Breath. You probably want to be building Dragon's Eye to build that up to get the big crystal ratio. And then a bit like you would do with Broken Myth previously when it stacked, is you build those stacks up and then you Dragon's Breath when you've got those stacks to make your ultimate really impactful. So that's probably the way that Scav's playstyle is going to shift, apart from, he'll still be really good with his Spitfires, but his Dragon's Breath is going to be that loaded ability now. So I think Scav's still going to be good. The nerfs are enough on his Spitfire to make especially his early game a bit more tolerable, and also doesn't punish you as hard if you walk into those Spitfires, which can be hard to dodge. But Scav's going to remain like A tier mid laner. He might not be like absolute S tier, because I think his early laning phase is getting hit pretty hard here, but overall he's going to remain a good mid laner. Let's have a look at the item balance changes. Atlas Pauldrons, attack speed reduction up. That's good, because a lot of people just didn't buy Atlas Pauldrons anymore because defenses got nerfed so hard that people just were not thinking about Atlas Pauldrons. And overall, this is going to be a nice change for those melee heroes that want to shut down the likes of Vox, want to shut down Blackfeather. All those kind of things are now going to be affected nicely. So that's a good change. Atlas Pauldrons were kind of on the fringe of being kind of completely out of meta because how bad defenses were, but I think this is a nice change. Woo! Frostburn's back in meta. Absolutely, you'll see a bit more Frostburn now. 15 CP might not seem like much, but honestly, this means that Frostburn can be picked up into specific circumstances where you would have felt like a Frostburn would have been good, but people didn't want an 85 CP item for some reason. Frostburn is genuinely viable. Sky is going to be loving life, and also a lot of those CP mid laners who previously avoided this might be a bit more enticed to pick it up as well. So I think Frostburn, you're going to start to see a bit more of that, and I think it makes it a bit more of a viable first item as well, because 100 CP is quite a decent punch to pack. And also you got to remember the price was reduced on it. They haven't changed the price on Frostburn, so it's actually going to be a really cost-effective item now. Weapon power on Infusions down. Definitely that helps with 3v3, where Infusions were super important at the points and timings of the game. Infusions weren't as regulated in 5v5, but overall this is going to help stop those sort of heavy late game power hitting Infusions. You're still going to need one. You're still going to have to match your opponent's Infusions, especially in 3v3, but they were kind of overloading power with those Infusions. Spellfire burn damage is down quite significantly. And that's the base burn damage, is it? Okay. Spellfire is still going to be good in the circumstances because it still burns over the same shorter time period. This is definitely going to hurt Spellfire as a first item, especially. But I think overall, you're still going to see it on CP carries that want to try and shut down healing. So, yeah, it's maybe not a great first item anymore, but overall, I think you're going to still see people pick this up when they are dealing with trying to shut down healing carries like Lyra. Rip Storm Crown, Rip Storm Guard Banner. And Tension Bow, passive damage down by 30. That's going to stop spikes from Kensei. That's going to stop spikes from Gwen. Pretty much anybody that abused a Tension Bow is definitely going to feel the hit. The Glaive Tension Bow Aftershock build, Grumpjaw Tension Bow Aftershock build. Everybody that loved using a Tension Bow is going to feel this hit, because whilst it might not seem like much, it's a 15, I think it's a 15% nerf or there or thereabouts. It's a pretty significant nerf overall, to be honest. And maybe just under 15%. So that's going to be like a sort of a 12 to 13% reduction in damage on Tension Bows. It's still going to be good to push the advantage, and don't get me wrong, 210 damage is still going to hit hard. But it's going to reduce that power spike, because it was very easy to obtain, especially in 5v5. You could come back at like 3 minutes of the Tension Bow and just crush your lane. And I still think Tension Bow is going to be good on the heroes that it was good on before. But now if I'm looking at this and I'm making a decision between how I want to play the game out, I might be avoiding Tension Bow if I don't think I can take the advantage. Like Gwen, I'd probably still build it on because it helps me be a lane bully before they can achieve their first item spike. But if I'm looking to scale up a bit better, that nerf's going to affect it significantly enough that I might consider going into a Sorrow Blade base build and skipping Tension Bow and trying to hit a Sorrow Blade spike instead. So there's enough damage there to mean that Tension Bow Aftershock builds especially have been nerfed, and people that abuse the Tension Bow spike at about 3 to 4 minutes into the game are going to start to struggle a bit more now. But it means it doesn't mean that Tension Bow's not good. Tension Bow is still good on the people that it was good on before. It's just going to mean it's less punishing to play against now.